Well, hello. Welcome to Miss Tweedy's Parents. This is my podcast where I talk with various parents that I've come across along the way. I am Miss Tweedy, also known as Margaret Dahlberg, piano teacher, early childhood music specialist, and someone who just loves to chat and connect with people from all walks of life. And today, Beatrice, oh my God, she is from such a unique walk of life. She has lived quite the life, and I can't wait for you to hear about it. She is 93 years old. She is as sharp as a tack, and she had homework with her. She did her homework and brought a sheet with her with all kinds of notes, and it was so wonderful to hear what she had to say. Here is my chat with Beatrice. Yeah. So we're just going to jump in. Like, I'm just basically going to say, hi, Beatrice. Thank you for joining me today.
I love being here. I'm
Wonderful.
Going to be interested in what you discover.
I know. Me too. I can't wait. You have the most beautiful voice. Has anybody told you that your speaking voice is it's like singing?
I don't know. It seems I can project.
But it's not just your projection. It's there's a timbre and a tone. It's like bird-like, quite song-like. And your accent, is it British?
Very British.
Because so I'm super excited about this. First of all, I know you mentioned to me you have a very unique story because you were stillborn, and I feel like I'm going to say it wrong.
Not stillborn.
You were not stillborn.
Okay.
You were still born. No, you were born when, was it the Raja?
Raj. Both my parents, maternal and paternal. My mother has a Spanish, Portuguese / Irish origin. My father was mostly from Kent. His male ancestors were Kent men. And Kent men have a special characteristic. I think they were strong. In literature, the Kent men.
Really?
Like the Vikings, you have the Kent men.
Well, that would make sense.
So that's something. So they come together with my father's family, as with the Hudson Bay Company that came out in, 17-something or 1600. The East India Company. Oh. The British were great explorers at that time. And at that time, Burma was a province or state of India, and then it separated and became its own kingdom. It was a sovereign nation.
No way. Now, forgive my ignorance. Is it still called Burma nowadays?
No, it's Myanmar.
That's Myanmar. Okay.
Myanmar.
Okay.
And I don't know much about my mother's family because the documents were housed in the library in Dublin that got burnt to the ground. So the ancestry, therefore, cannot be furthered. So my parents met in Rangoon.
And Rangoon that's in
the capital.
Okay.
Today it's called Yangon.
Okay.
It's very hard to imagine and to describe what it was like then. Today, of course, it's vastly, vastly different.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
Burma was really one of the jewels in the British crown. Mm. It's a very rich country, steeped in rubies, rubber, teak, oil, you name it.
Right.
Rare materials, etc., etc. The British fought 3 wars with the Burmese.
Really?
And took over the kingdom, displaced and deposed the king and the royal family. And so then they governed the same way as, the Brits here governed, took over from the indigenous people.
Were they in charge when you were born, the Brits?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. My father was a senior civil servant. We had a good life, lived for 10 years. It was when I was 10 that the Japanese invaded Burma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, after Pearl Harbor. The first bombing we experienced was on the 23rd of December.
You remember that date?
Oh, absolutely. I was 10. We were sitting down to a meal. The air raid siren went off. We ducked under the table.
Oh
not wondering how much protection it would give us. And huge destruction of Rangoon. And their goal was to just come down with their planes and strafe the main streets and just machine gun everybody they saw.
Oh my gosh.
The Royal Air Force at the time, the RAFs, were not prepared.
Right.
Rangoon was unprepared.
Took everyone by surprise.
Took everyone, yeah.
Oh my God.
So that, I know we should get to the parenting part.
Oh, no. We'll get there.
So, meanwhile, prior to this, my father had arranged for a trench where you took refuge, like a bunker.
Yeah.
So, under the trees in the backyard, he had arranged to have an L-shaped trench, but it hadn't been completed. So, after that first raid, he decided that we had to cover the trench, or he had to cover the trench. So that evening, my mother, father in the front seat of the car, and I was behind. We went off to the lumber yards to get the wood. We got the wood, and the wood was placed along, the planks were placed along the back seat, and I sat in the back seat and had my fingers holding the planks, sort of looking out the window. Well, my father underestimated the width of the planks.
Oh, no.
And we hit this. And the next moment I thought, gee, my pants are all wet. Looked down and there was a pool of blood.
What?
It had crushed my finger.
Which is amazing, because I have to say, I didn't even mention you're a piano student of my mother's.
Yeah.
So you play advanced, beautiful music.
But
your pointer finger is not the same shape as...
No, this would have been
typically.
a 10-year-old.
But you do still have your nail intact.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's no feeling.
Oh,
You
interesting.
can put a pin through there and I wouldn't
Oh,
feel
my
it.
gosh. Oh, wow.
So my mother was horrified. So immediately she took me off to the hospital, Rangoon Hospital. And of course, the debris after the first air raid around the city was just unbelievable. Who do you think is going to look after or look at a little broken finger
Oh, my goodness.
when there are people laying on along the sides of the walls? And
Wow,
it
what a
was
memory. I can't...
terrible scene.
Yeah.
Terrible scene. So anyhow, this is my war wound. I call it my war wound
Yes.
that never healed. My mum and my two brothers and I left Rangoon, and my father couldn't come because his role was to destroy the port, Rangoon port. My mother was a very dominant woman, but beautiful voice and a good pianist.
Ooh, sounds like her daughter.
I don't know about
formidable
that.
woman?
No, not quite. Anyhow, so my mom takes us, she said to Adam, Adam, that's my father, I am going despite you not coming with us. Because I hate to think, these words ring in my ears, I hate to think what the Japanese would do to Beatrice when they arrive.
Oh,
And of course, what are they going to do to me?
Yeah, you're so little, of course. Oh, my God.
So, in retrospect, I do realize. Anyhow, we go up north by train. Train is like you see in Bangladesh or whatever.
Oh,
People
yeah.
hanging out of the windows.
And
so
probably
forth.
everyone's trying to get out.
Everyone. No tickets, no seats. You just barge your way in. And we went to Maymyo, where my grandparents were, my father's parents. And the Americans then flew us out from Mandalay over the hump, what they call the hump, the Himalayas,
Wow.
into Calcutta.
Oh, wow.
On the way, we're strafed by Japanese planes.
Okay, help me. So strafed. This is not a term I'm
Strafed.
familiar with.
Machine gunned.
Yeah, okay, well, no
Machine
wonder.
gunned. Machine
Wow.
gunned. Yeah. Anyhow, my mum arrives with us 3 kids. The Red Cross put us up in lodgings like immigrants. Well, we are immigrants,
Wow.
refugees.
Yeah, refugees.
And, no money, no father, no nothing. Now, what do we do now?
Oh, my
My
goodness.
mother, of course, is, she pulls everything together. She puts us into boarding school. And within a week, we're chuffed off by train to Lucknow, which is northern India.
Wow.
My brother's going to boys' boarding school. I go into girls' boarding school.
So totally separated from your family. Your family's been completely
It's gone.
Obliterated.
It was never together again after that. One of the things that I'm reminded of, and it came from my younger brother, he said, I remember, he said, when I saw him years ago, Mum saying to me, "Oh, Leslie, we're going on a picnic. We're going on a picnic in the train. It's taking us somewhere. Hop on the train, quick, quick."
Oh, my goodness.
So he gets in and the door shuts.
Oh, my God.
And he's 4.5.
Oh, my God.
4.5.
Boy, has parenting changed.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Oh, my God.
So we were 5 years in boarding schools.
Yes.
Not in the same one, in different. It was a good convent. My experiences were good in the convent.
Yes.
Even though I'm not Catholic, I came from a very strong Church of England background, but Catholic schools, convents were renowned to be the best in India. So then...
And did your father do okay in Burma? I'm just curious.
No. That was another disaster scene. So we left in February, March. Then Burma fell to the Japanese. And now everybody had to escape. But the ports were destroyed. It was called the aerodrome. Airports were destroyed. The railway system was destroyed. He was left with nothing but to walk out.
Oh
so
God.
He walked the Burma Road. It took him 6 months.
Oh, my God.
Through jungle, Japanese guerrillas, malaria.
Oh, my God.
No food, begging, all the way. So I asked my younger brother, because he lived with my family a little longer than I did. I said, what was Dad's experience on the Burma Road? How did he survive? Oh, he carried the Bible. My father was a very religious man, and a small little aluminum teapot. And so what he would do would be to get whatever he thought he could eat and try to boil it in his teapot and beg for rice, read his Bible. And my father was a hunter. He was a big game hunter. So he used to look at the monkeys and what they ate in the jungle.
Mm.
And he thought, oh, if they can eat those leaves, I can eat those leaves. So he would gather. So my brother said, Dad said that was his key to survival.
Oh,
anyhow, he arrives he's, according to my mother, he is a wraith, thin
Yes.
and by the time, but he pulls himself together. But he was never the same. I remember my father, before I turned 10, there was always music in the family, the singing, and I remember the songs, and both of them had lovely voices, and they would sing together. But after we all came together after the war in 1947, and then where do we go? Now, of course, India has its independence.
Yeah.
It throws out all the Brits. We go back to Burma. Burma has its independence and throws us out. So then, and England, the UK, was just the pittance after the war.
Yes.
It was not a place to go to.
No.
So it was either Canada or New Zealand.
Wow.
And my older brother, he was ready for university. He wanted to go into forestry.
Oh.
So my parents chose New Zealand. That's how we got to New Zealand in 48.
Wow.
Yeah. And all through my schooling, I had always wanted to go into medicine.
Okay.
I had my eyes set on medicine.
That would have been pretty cutting edge.
Yes, it was. But my mother was very dominant.
She was, yeah.
She was one of 13 children, but she was the chosen woman in her family.
Really?
Because my grandfather was the registrar of the High Court in Rangoon.
Oh, wow.
He had quite a distinguished position.
Wow.
But his wife was always giving birth to 13 children. So he chose my mother, who had a presence that could be the first lady. Yeah.
Formidable
So
conviction.
he would take her on his arm when there were levees and when they were visiting Brit personnel.
Right.
And there were all these celebrations and whatever was taking place, he would take my mother.
Wow.
So she had become used to living the high life, so to speak, and knew how to command her position and command her behavior. And so when we got to New Zealand, I wanted to go into medicine, but I didn't quite have the educational qualifications necessary to enter med school. So I had to return and do more advanced studies at school and then presented myself. Then they accepted me. And then I entered pre-med studies. And then I entered med studies. And of particular note, and I have to brag, because this is now...
Please do.
The years escape me.
Into the early 50s, I'm guessing.
Something
early
like
50s.
that. Yeah, we left New Zealand in 54. So at that time... there were only 2 med schools. And that year, of the 100 students they accepted, only 10 places were given to women.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. God, not only like 90% male, 10% female.
10%.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyhow, I go to med school. But meanwhile, I'd met my husband. But he was completing his engineering degree, which was 3 years in New Zealand. He was in his last year when I met him and so forth. So I did complete 2 years of medical school and looking forward very much to become a doctor and all of that. But it never happened because Douglas had completed his master's degree in engineering and wanted to go to England and gave me the ultimatum.
Oh.
Yeah. No. So I gave in. I capitulated.
Oh.
So I went.
I'd love to imagine, like, especially the younger generations listening to the story. What do you now, as, Beatrice in 2025, do you look back? Obviously, I doubt you have any regrets. You've lived a wonderful life. But do you think... would you have made that same decision if it was 2025?
No, I would not have stayed behind in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because I've had a very happy marriage.
Yeah.
Very happy marriage, very contented. He was a great husband. A friend of mine says, he was a prince among men. Sometimes I think, yeah, he was a prince among men.
And you still had a career.
Yes.
Just not as a doctor.
And he prompted me. In fact, he suggested when we came to Calgary, would you like to go back to med school? And he favored that. He promoted it. I did go to the med school. It was just starting here. And I saw the dean of the Faculty of Medicine. He said, you want to go to medicine in your 40s? And he said, there's no place for you here. So
he didn't let you in?
No. There were too many young people coming along.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you so let's just back up a bit then. So you followed Douglas then?
Yeah, 54 we married, went to England. 55 Janice was born. We were there for a couple of years. And then we went to Australia. And we lived in Adelaide for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then he was offered the head of the department of mechanical engineering here in Calgary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah. So it's travel around.
You are such an international person. Oh my goodness.
I don't know who I am. Let me tell you. Go round and round. Yeah.
And I mean, just knowing, through my mom, the elements of challenge it adds moving around as a mom. And back then, when there were no babysitter daycares, preschools, day homes, all that stuff that is in place now to help parents out wasn't there.
Yeah. Douglas was a very supportive person, ultimately in parenting, because he was of the belief that was my role. His role was to bring in the bread and butter and keep the family safe. And my role was to provide the parenting. But then when John, the third child, developed asthma, and with 4 children and John with asthma, I remember one night waking up to this asthmatic kid who was having an attack and saying to Douglas, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. And at that point, he stepped in and really helped with the parenting. He really did. That made a huge difference. Huge
I can't imagine 4 children and
4
one
children.
of them. And how many years apart were those 4 children?
A couple of years, 55, 57, 59, 63.
Okay,
That's
similar. It's interesting. You and my mom are similar.
Yeah.
And boys and girls, what are the
first one was a girl, and then the 3 boys.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah.
So she must be a pretty strong girl then, if she had 3 younger brothers.
She is. She was tested as being gifted.
Yes.
When, those days.
Yep.
That she was a gifted child. She was put in gifted classrooms. And being the only girl, she had a lot of privileges, adored by her father. She created a lot of, not havoc, excitement in the family. Yeah. And then eventually became a lawyer.
Right. She found her way.
Married a lawyer. They have a happy marriage. Loves travel and travel writing.
That's what, I knew she's a travel writer.
And
she sounds like a creative. Like us creatives have to find our mode of expression, and sounds like your daughter's found it.
Yeah. Douglas pursued me.
Did he?
I didn't have to do anything. He just pursued me in New Zealand. Then Jan was born, the first child. And my uncle in England was a psychiatrist. My uncle said to me, beware of Dr. Spock.
Beware of Dr. Spock.
And my uncle was old-fashioned. And Dr. Spock was promoting liberal feeding anytime, no regimen, all of that.
Yes.
But my uncle was promoting this regimen. And I obeyed him and didn't obey Dr. Spock. And
so you had a more traditional role as a mother.
Interesting. Yeah. For 6 months I did this. And this poor little baby, I think, had the smallest little stomach. And in between feeds, for our feeds, I would give her this little bottle of water until the vicar in the village in Derby came to visit. And the baby was in a pram over there, and we were having tea, the vicar and his wife and myself. Douglas was at work. And the vicar's wife said, I think your baby's hungry, dear. Why don't you go and feed her? I said, but I can't. It's 10 minutes to go before I can. And she said, don't worry about that. I'll excuse you. And after that, feeding became more regular.
I love it. You threw away what your uncle had said, and you said, I'm parenting from instinct now.
Yeah. With the graciousness of the vicar's wife who supported me.
Isn't it amazing? We just need one person.
And an older person.
Obedient to your uncle. And then an older, respectable person who said, what are you doing? Feed your baby.
And a vicar's wife. In those days, being a vicar was, to a young person of 21, 22, was like...
Of high standing.
High
right?
standing.
And
Yeah, they must know everything. Then after that, of course, we moved to Australia. And we went to Adelaide. Where we lived for 10 years. There was a professor from Edmonton visiting Adelaide University and spoke with Douglas and said, there's a new university opening in Calgary, and they're looking for people. Why don't you apply?
Oh, wow.
So that's how we came as the head of mechanical engineering. That's how we came here.
Okay, so I'm just curious. So then you also had a career as well, did you not?
So when we were in Australia, in the meanwhile, my father had passed away, and my mother was in New Zealand. And the two brothers had left. She was on her own. So we invited her to come and live with us in Adelaide. And we put on 2 rooms to our house. And she looked after the 4 children in the day while I worked as a teacher with my limited medical degree, but science.
Yeah.
It was all science.
Right.
And I don't know, Adelaide public system, school system accepted me as a teacher. So,
I love it. It's those baby boomer years, it's crazy for these younger generations to hear of the stories of your generation, my mom and dad, where you just kind of walked out of university and you're like, I wonder which job I should pick, Like everyone was looking for people.
I never thought about that. And no teacher training. So that helped bring some money in. And then the job came out in Calgary, which is what brought us here. And then my mother followed, and she continued to look after the family. Because now Douglas said, if you want to go back to med school, it's your opportunity. But then they didn't accept me. But then what am I going to do? So I went on and got a PhD.
Oh, wow.
And I thought I'd go and do psychology.
Okay.
So it wasn't my primary choice. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
No, it's a fill-in.
Back then, there were certain acceptable degrees for women.
Yeah.
And psychology was one, nursing, teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Anyhow, it stood me in good stead. I worked for 19 years with the school board as a school psychologist until I could not do it anymore.
You'd had it.
Then I branched out on my own.
So you were just a therapist, like a clinical...
An assessor for children's needs.
Oh, wow.
Well, the gifted needs, assessing usually their intellect and then their personality. So, and then one of them, I'm not proud to say, it's quite despicable. During my training, the professor, most of the professors, 2 of the 3 professors were interested in the handicapped, intellectually handicapped. And they had strong positions in Red Deer. I don't know if that Red Deer home is still open or whether it's all gone astray. But for those who are not succeeding in school, PhD students, we had to go and assess them. And below an IQ of 50 or 30 or whatever, they were shipped off to Red Deer.
Oh.
So
when you say despicable, you mean the fact that you were sending children away from their families. Yeah. You don't feel good about that.
No.
If people could see you, you have a look on your face of just like
dislike.
Dislike. You're
but
not.
This is segregation of.
And it's an era, right? So at the time you sounds like even then you knew it wasn't right, but that's what your job was.
And that was our expectation as students. You had to assess 30 students or whatever, write reports on them.
This is interesting because then you've had your personal experience as a mother of 4, and then you also had clinical experience as a psychologist. And in an era, again, things were so different back then.
Very, very, very,
Just
very
constantly
different.
changing.
It was a very busy time period. I'm grateful to Douglas. He was hugely interactive as a father.
Yeah.
Prompted by illness in the family. So that played a dominant role. So Andrew, the last child,
was he the one with asthma?
Diabetes, type 1.
Oh my.
And maybe Douglas felt guilty and regretful. He had developed chicken pox. one summer when Andrew was about 4 years of age, or 4.5. And Douglas got over his chicken pox. And he had chicken pox as a child. He had it very mildly as an adult. Andrew got chicken pox, 4.5 years of age, and he just never seemed to get over it.
Really?
I was so worried about him. And I'd say to Douglas, he's not getting any better. And Douglas would calm me down and say, I've gotten over my chicken pox. Andrew should get over his chicken pox.
Right, we just want to try
and
to...
I said, my gut feeling is there's something more going on. And I said, I think he has diabetes. No, there's no diabetes in our family, in your family or my family. Why would he have diabetes? This conversation.
Totally.
No, I just guess, he's losing weight. So I'm going to take him to the doctor. So took him off one afternoon. Doctor said, you worry too much. Your son is badly toilet trained. That's the problem.
What?
Look what I've done.
Oh my God.
So the next day I go back again. Second day. And I said, it's not working. Oh, I think he'd given him suppositories and so forth. And I said, it's not working. He's even more ill. Then he said to me, ma'am, I think you're sick in the head and you need to see a psychiatrist. This child is badly toilet trained.
Oh my God.
And I said, if you don't do something tonight, he's going to die on me.
Good for you.
Almost at the point of whacking him over the head.
Oh my goodness.
I was
good for you.
So then he says, okay. I didn't realize you could go directly to a pediatrician. So anyhow, and he said, after examining, Andrew runs his hand over him. I want your husband here right now. So I phone and he's chairing the meeting. I said, we must have Douglas here at this medical conference. So she goes into the meeting, disrupts the meeting, tells him he has to come. He comes in agitated. And Dr. Blake sits us down and says, your son has diabetes type 1. I want you to take him directly to Foothills Hospital and I'll see him there. Gives him a shot of insulin and a miracle drug. It's amazing how this guy, this young child, 4.5, suddenly comes alive.
Oh my goodness.
It's a huge difference. It's incredible.
Oh, thank goodness you had the tenacity. Especially back then, because, women were supposed to kind of know their place, right? And if a doctor was saying to you, your child's fine, you're sick in the head.
Yeah.
The fact that you were able to stand up to him.
Yeah. And not succumb and believe I'm sick in the head. And he said, our diet changes, our activities change. We have to increase our whole lifestyle has to. He really took the diabetes in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
It wasn't left up to me. So thereafter, no sweets, no cakes, no sweetened drinks. We just
kind of what we're all doing nowadays anyway.
And activity. We became very active. In fact, when we went on trips, holiday trips, after an hour, he'd stop the car and we'd all have to run, and come back in,
Yeah,
we went down to Disneyland one summer, and this was throughout the road trip to Disneyland, every so often. So, and never gave up on managing it. And that was 4.5. Andrew's close to 65, and he doesn't have a single complication.
Yeah, because that was a time where that could be a bit of a sentence, right?
Oh,
Diabetes
it
1.
Was huge. The needles were thick and painful. Now they're little slender things, I don't bother. Andrew looks after himself very well. So health played a huge influence. The other thing that really influenced our parenting is the isolation of the family.
Yes.
We were the only ones here.
Yes.
Even today, people say, I have no brothers, no sisters, no cousins, no aunts. Douglas's family were all in New Zealand.
No.
So there was just, we had to rely on each other.
Yeah.
The interdependence. And fortunately, I feel quite privileged. And he was there for me and there for the children. Did much sacrifice in terms of moving through his career upward, because I had now developed a career and looking after me in this career and not having to, he could have moved on like that, but he didn't. And the other thing that binds the family and influences my parenting is the size of the family.
Yes.
The 4 kids.
4 children.
4 kids.
Oh, yeah.
Today it's 1 or 2. And I don't want to make any comparisons. Who could be busier than a mother of 4 children?
I bet, yeah. So how many grandchildren do you have?
Andrew has 2 sons.
Yeah.
John and Jenny don't have any.
Okay.
And Janice has 1.
Okay.
The one who's in New York. Paul has 1 and an adopted one.
Okay.
Recently adopted.
Oh, wow.
And he's very proud of the recent adoption, which I'd say is about two weeks ago. But, what I've written here, the 3 boys were happy to play with each other. They would roam around when we came to Calgary. They would roam around, and they really kept their distance from their sister, who thought they were scum.
Yeah, probably wanted nothing to do with them. Yeah.
So the other thing that made a huge difference in my parenting is my work.
Yeah.
As a working mother.
Yes.
Or studying, going to university.
Particularly back then, again, not as many systems in place to support working women.
No. So my parenting was affected, but I didn't want to give. I couldn't. I was infused with becoming a doctor or working or, producing.
Having a career. Well, you were part of that earliest era, the Betty Friedan,
Yeah. But being a working mother meant that as a parent, I put a lot of responsibility on the children. They were each given choose a day in the week they had to cook.
Oh, wow.
So they cooked dinner. They did their own laundry. They cleaned their own rooms.
But they were independent.
But
they had to
be.
Yeah.
That was one thing. And then the other thing was Douglas was very insistent that they learn survival skills because he had a very unusual background. He was brought up with the Maoris.
Oh, no way.
It's a different story.
Right. Now, he was a New Zealander?
He was a New Zealander.
Whereas you were all over the map. But
Scottish.
Okay.
And that's a different story.
Yeah.
But he grew up with them. He had his first pair of shoes at the age of 13.
Oh, my gosh.
He lived with the Maoris in a Maori village.
Wow.
In different Maori villages where his father was the teacher, the be all and the end all person. Preacher, the teacher, the lawyer, the doctor,
right.
When the Brits conquered New Zealand, they demanded in the Treaty of Waitangi, one of the conditions is that you have to educate us.
Oh, okay. The Maori said that. They wanted. And that's why survival skills for your kids were very important because he'd been raised in the bush, basically.
Yeah. So there were many things, and I didn't have time to mollycoddle.
Yes. I know what you mean. I wish people could see the look on your face because it's a bit disdain. You're like, I get what you're saying is we do a little too much mollycoddling these days.
So I didn't have the time, A, and B, it was never done to me.
Well, yeah, like look at your upbringing. How could you even you were? Yeah.
This is what I thought was the normal thing to do.
Yeah.
So
I mean, who was coddling you when you were in boarding school? Really?
Nobody.
You know?
So anyhow, I'll talk a little bit about Douglas's. We worked together very, very well as
Sounds
parents.
like it, yeah.
You know, we interacted. He had an iron fist in
Really?
kid gloves.
Really?
Iron fist.
Fist in kid gloves. Explain. Oh, yeah, I get that. I get it.
A nice approach.
I love that.
A nice approach. He was like that even at the university when he was head of the department.
Oh, I bet. So he commanded respect because behind that gentleness,
everybody talked about how kind and gentle and compassionate and so forth. But he got things done.
Yeah, he was tough.
He was tough. Yeah.
Wow.
So now you have the two aspects.
Yeah.
And of course, we supported each other in the management of the children. So in terms of discipline, I always relied on him. I knew he was a backup. If the kids were in trouble, I could call on him. And then strapping was customary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he'd always threaten, pull his belt out, frighten them. No? But he never, ever used it.
Right. The threat. Oh, I remember the threat.
The
Here it was the wooden spoon.
Yeah, wooden spoon.
We were threatened with the wooden spoon, but
or the
nobody
fly
ever.
swat.
We did not do the fly swat, which would have seemed not nearly as bad as a wooden spoon. A fly swat's more flexible than a wooden spoon.
The children today, the boys especially today, remember, the times how they padded their pants with newspaper.
Oh!
Expecting that.
But it never happened.
It never happened. And then the other thing that was important for both of us was to give them the opportunity of experience, wide experiences.
Yeah.
So, we, even though we couldn't barely afford it, within a year or the year after we were in Calgary, we all made our trips down to Disneyland and, but we didn't have all the camping gear that normal people had. We had to light stoves in the heat of the summer, and I can remember Janice crying and saying, "I don't want to sit by this fire."
Oh.
We'd cook without, we didn't have a camp stove.
Yes, yeah. You used the fire. We used to use the fire too. My dad, his rule was only in emergency would we use the camp stove. Otherwise, we were using the fire.
The other thing that Douglas did was individual interests, the kids' interests, what they liked doing.
Right.
Andrew loved pets. I remember one summer Douglas building an aviary for him to, keep his birds. Also, his aspirations for that the kids get higher education. He promoted that very strongly because he got his PhD under very difficult circumstances. His father was a teacher. His mother was secretary when they left the Maori community and went back into civilization. They didn't have much money. They didn't inherit money.
Right.
They lived from paycheck to paycheck. When he was 13, his mother became concerned that he was quite unruly, uncivilized, like a Maori.
Right.
So her husband's parents were ministers in Auckland. And so Douglas was sent to live with his grandparents.
Hence the shoes.
Hence the shoes, hence the proper schooling.
Right.
Hence loved. He cherished his grandparents, I think even better than his own parents, his own mother. There was friction between the two of them.
Yeah.
And after he had lived with his grandparents, he wanted higher education.
Mm-hmm.
He approached his mother and father at the dinner table and said he wanted to become an engineer. His mother got so upset. And you're going to be taking money from us for how many years? She emptied her dinner plate over his head. At which point he left the table, left the home, and never returned.
Oh my goodness.
He was 17 or 18. And he supported himself through working as a candid cameraman.
Oh, no way.
And he worked on wharves and so forth, So his favorite sentence was, "Get yourself a ticket, man. Get yourself a ticket." He felt it was very important for the boys to get themselves a ticket. I don't mind what ticket you get, but get yourself a ticket.
So education.
Education.
Wow.
And then lastly is the role of religion.
Okay.
Which came about when he lived with his grandparents.
Okay. So did you take your kids to church regularly?
Yes. And of course, I had come from a convent.
Right. Absolutely.
Where I felt I was destined to be the bride of Christ. Are you Catholic?
No, not at all.
The highest calling in life was to be a bride of Christ.
Oh my goodness. Purity. Yeah.
I mean, I was suffused with this
Oh,
kind of thinking.
Oh my goodness. So that was good then, because when you met Douglas and you were ready not to be a bride of Christ.
Broaden my mind.
Yeah, to be a bride of Douglas's, but at least you shared a piety.
Well, he helped me because I didn't know. I'd never known another man or a boy because I never grew up with boys.
Right. You were in convents. Yeah.
We never talked to boys.
So there was no dating, no nothing.
Dating.
So he was sort of the first man
First and only.
Wow. When did he pass away?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a big part of your world.
Even though he was very religious when we married, and the children were brought up in that religious tradition, always grace before meals. He'd always bow his head wherever he was. There's always nightly prayers and so forth. Kids were introduced, involved, but they're running around with ruffians and non-believers. The boys didn't want anything of it.
Yeah, wasn't.
And I made a huge mistake. To get them to go to church on a Sunday, I said, get them dressed.
Yeah.
You know, in their church clothes. And one day I said, put your church clothes on. And they'd run around the house, defy me. Good, if you're going to keep this up, then I'm not going to take you to church. You can go and do whatever you want to do.
Oops.
That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Backfired.
Regrets. I could have been more available to the kids during their teenage years because I was working, and that is something that they throw at me.
Yeah.
You weren't there when we needed you, Mom.
Yeah, I think that's a common mistake. I think that I decided the kids didn't need me as much when they were teens, and started trying to figure out what my next steps were, only to realize that in the way they needed me more than ever when they needed me.
Yeah.
Just not as often.
Yeah. Well, you think they can stand on their own, that they're not needing you, because there are so many times that they don't need you. But
and they put on a good front. There's a book called Untangled about young girls by Lisa Lamour, I think. And she talks about there's a crucial age like 14, 15, where girls seem like adults, but they're almost playing dress up. And we can misperceive them being more grown up than they are. So that's your biggest regret, that you wish you'd been more available to them.
And when we lived in Adelaide, we had difficulty to make ends meet. You know, Douglas was an assistant professor at the university, not earning very much money. I was bringing in a little bit for kids. She had a friend who was an only child, and the mother lavished money on her. Beautiful shoes and beautiful dresses. And Jan would be so envious, and she wanted a pair of shoes like her friend had. And all I could afford were Oxford shoes.
Oh.
So, you know, it's left her lingering yearning. She focuses on buying good shoes.
She likes to have her shoes.
She likes to have her shoes.
I remember as a kid, I had a similar story in that I'm the youngest of four. The recession was not a good time for anybody in the early 80s. And my best friend was a single child. All I focused on was how at Christmas, I would dread our phone conversations because she would list off all these things she'd get, and I'd be like, I got a book. Anyway, it's hard to be a kid in those places.
So just in summing up, I believe that Douglas and I did our best as parents. We shared it.
Yeah.
I can't say all the parenting was mine.
Well, I hear that. It sounds like you gave him a good voice and that he contributed a strong voice.
Absolutely. But it was very dominated by the family size, the income levels, very small, the culture differences that we went through, and the health issues. They dominated.
Yeah.
The kids' health issues.
I like that you started with "we did our best," because I think that my suspicion and sort of observation is that nowadays, before we have kids, we're very much aware of the things our parents did not do for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have kids and we really try hard to do a great job. And eventually, we start to lose our footing a bit, and we start to realize how hard it is. And if we're lucky, we have a moment where we go, oh, no wonder my parents made the mistakes, the so-called mistakes I call them.
Because it was hard.
The decisions, because this is really hard. We all we could say is we did our best, because it's not like, I kind of laugh. Like the other day my daughter was, talking about some ways she felt growing up. I'm not going to go into details because it's a private conversation, but she felt a certain way growing up. And I said to her, it's so interesting that happened, because I was working so hard to make sure you didn't feel that way, and yet you still felt that way.
Yeah.
And talk about different perspectives.
Yeah.
And what can you say?
Yeah.
We tried.
Yeah. We tried.
We did our best.
And we couldn't quite read them. Oh, we thought we were reading them, but we weren't. They fooled us.
Yeah, well, and they're their own individuals.
Yeah.
And we've got a career and a relationship,
and we have our own needs as parents, which would keep us happy and keep us going.
Yes. It's just a massive juggling act.
Yeah.
And I think that compassion is so important. We did our best.
Being a parent, I think, has enabled me to expand, use all of my skills, what I've been given, make the best use of experiences, and it's added to my emotional growth, not so much my physical growth, but other growths. You know what I mean? As
mental,
a person.
Emotional maturity, wisdom.
Yes, it's made me more mature, made me more understanding.
For me as a woman, I don't think I realized how strong and capable I was until I had to be.
Absolute. That's one thing I say to people. You don't realize how much strength you have until you're in that experience.
Yes.
It comes through. You don't realize, you don't tap it.
No. And you have it in spades, for sure.
I don't know.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you what I composed this morning.
Oh.
So this morning I sat down and I thought, okay, Beatrice is coming today. What's her theme? And I took a few notes because I thought, how do I want to, what are things about Beatrice? I don't know you well. Lovely encounters you and I have had. And that beautiful voice is a big part. I see you as courageous. It's obvious now listening, but just listening to, the pieces of music you play. Spirited, I wrote, maybe even fiery.
Oh.
Not sure about that. Would people say you're fiery? Spirited for sure.
Okay.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Sophisticated. Peacock came to mind, not that you are a peacock, but I was picturing the beautiful bird tail. I don't know why. That came to my mind. Beauty and the voice. So those were things that sort of came into my mind. Anyway, this is the beginning. that's just the beginning.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Will it be modified or?
Oh yeah, it'll get longer, more developed. There'll probably be other instruments in there.
Oh, beautiful.
I just want to thank you for coming today. It was
Okay,
so interesting to hear what you have to say. You are at the forefront to me for modern women today. Having that
Gloria Steinem era.
Yeah, having that strength and knowing that you needed a career and knowing that, your children needed what they needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was just so fascinating and interesting to me. I felt like it was a history lesson and just also, I don't know, just such a great perspective to have. I feel like I just can't relate to what it must have been like to be a woman at a time where you weren't granted equal opportunities. I just can't imagine. I mean, things aren't perfect yet for sure, but what a difference. Anyway, her song was a special one. For me, I really enjoyed creating it. And because I felt such a strong duo between her and her husband, it's piano and cello. And Perseverance is the title. And I hope you enjoy it. It covers a lot of different aspects of her life, but what prevails is beauty. And she is a beauty in every possible way. So Perseverance is going to play us out. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening.